My marriage ended at 2 in the morning on a Tuesday, illuminated by the cold blue light of a FaceTime call. I was sitting alone in our kitchen, believing my husband was stuck in Houston for work. Then, my cousin turned her camera toward the frozen tarmac in New Jersey. There he was, boarding a white Gulfstream bound for Dubai, his hand resting on the waist of a woman who was definitely not me. My name is Lauren Pierce. At 34, I was a senior financial advisor at Northbridge Advisory in Denver. I lived in a sprawling colonial revival that photographed beautifully for Instagram, the kind of place that screamed American dream. My husband, Nathan Pierce, was a rising star in commercial real estate. We had the cars, the memberships, and the empty nursery that was currently serving as a storage room for boxes of hormone injections because we were deep in the exhausting trench of IVF. It was a quiet Tuesday evening in late January. The house was so silent I could hear the wind rattling the storm windows. I sat at the kitchen island with the blue glow of my laptop reflecting off the granite, reconciling a payroll spreadsheet for a client. Nathan had texted me earlier. He said he was stuck in Houston for an urgent closing on a warehouse complex. I did not question him. I was used to the empty side of the bed. I told myself this was the tax on success. Then my phone buzzed against the marble countertop. It was nearly midnight. The screen lit up with a FaceTime request from my cousin, Ava Collins. Ava was a first officer for Skylux Private, a charter airline that catered to people who did not know the price of a gallon of milk. Seeing her calling this late was odd. I swiped to answer. The connection was grainy at first, then settled on Ava's face. She was in a VIP pilot lounge, the lighting dim and sterile. She looked pale. "Lauren," she said, her voice dropping to a whisper that barely registered over the hum of the lounge. "Lauren, are you sure Nathan is in Houston?" I frowned, confused by the urgency in her tone. "Yes, he texted me photos of his dinner." Why Ava bit her lip. She looked around nervously before speaking again. "I am at Teterboro in New Jersey. We are prepping a Global 7000 for a charter. Look." She flipped the camera. The screen showed the dark tarmac, illuminated by harsh floodlights. A sleek white jet sat waiting, stairs down. Walking toward it were two figures. One was a woman in a cream trench coat, her hair perfectly blown out despite the wind. The other was a man. He wore a heavy wool designer coat I recognized because I had bought it for his birthday last year. "It's just a client," I said, my voice shaking slightly. "He meets clients everywhere." "Lauren, look closer," Ava whispered. She zoomed in. The digital image pixelated for a second before sharpening. The man turned his head to say something to the ground crew. I saw the sharp jawline. I saw the small, jagged scar just under his earlobe where he had cut himself shaving the morning of our wedding. Then the wind blew his collar, revealing the small geometric tattoo on the back of his neck. My stomach dropped through the floor. "They are boarding for Dubai," Ava said, her voice trembling. "Flight leaves at 2 in the morning. It is just the two of them on the manifest." I tried to find a logical explanation. Maybe it was a business partner. Maybe the woman was an investor. Then I saw her hand. She slid her palm flat against the small of his back, an intimate, possessive gesture. Nathan stopped on the stairs. He leaned down and said something into her ear, smiling in a way he had not smiled at me in years. The screen went black as Ava ended the call. I sat there frozen. The kitchen suddenly felt freezing. My hands were shaking so hard I could barely unlock my phone. I scrolled back to the messages Nathan had sent me 3 hours ago. A picture of a steak. A picture of a hotel room TV. A picture of a receipt. I looked at the metadata. The steak photo was taken 2 weeks ago. The hotel room photo was a screenshot from a travel website. I spent the rest of the night sitting in the dark. I did not cry. I just listened to the ice maker cycle on and off in the refrigerator and the rhythmic ticking of the wall clock. Every second felt like a physical blow. I replayed the last 6 months in my head, the late nights, the sudden trips, the way he guarded his phone. I had called myself crazy for suspecting him. Now I knew I had been the only one not seeing the truth. By 5 in the morning, the sky outside was turning a bruised purple. I opened my laptop again, but not for work. I dug into a folder titled Nathan, Personal. I had helped him organize his personal finances months ago just for fun. I opened a PDF of a loan guarantee he had asked me to sign because he was swamped and needed to move fast. I zoomed in on the fine print. My signature was there, bold and clear, but the entity listed as the beneficiary was not a bank. It was a holding company based in Delaware. I checked another document, another guarantee. He had used my credit, my name, and my clean financial record to secure leverage for deals I knew nothing about. I stared out the window at the Denver skyline, obscured by the morning fog. The pain was there, sharp and tearing at my chest, but beneath it, something else was waking up. It was cold and hard. Nathan thought I was just the wife who kept the home warm while he played king. He had made a mistake. He had forgotten that I was the one who balanced the books. "You think you can just fly away?" I whispered to the empty room. I was cornered, betrayed, and legally exposed. But I was not dead yet. 3 days later, Nathan walked through the door, dragging his leather weekender bag like it weighed 100 pounds. He looked exhausted. His tie was loosened, his hair was messy, and he let out a heavy sigh as he kicked off his shoes. It was a perfect performance. If I had not seen him boarding a jet to Dubai 72 hours ago, I would have rushed over to massage his shoulders. Instead, I stood by the kitchen island, gripping a ceramic mug of black coffee so hard my knuckles were white. "God, I am beat," Nathan said, rubbing his temples. Houston was a nightmare. The traffic on the I-10 was gridlock. "Here," I said, sliding the coffee across the granite. "You must be tired." He took a sip and grimaced. "Thanks, babe." The client was impossible. We were in negotiations until 2 in the morning, and the hotel Wi-Fi was absolute garbage, which is why I couldn't FaceTime you. "I missed you." He was so smooth. The lie rolled off his tongue with the ease of a man who had rehearsed it in the mirror. I did not scream. I did not cry. I simply picked up my phone, unlocked it, and placed it on the counter between us. The video Ava had sent me was already queued up. I pressed play. On the small screen, the white Gulfstream sat under the harsh airport lights. The figure of Nathan walked up the stairs. He paused. He reached back. He took the hand of the woman in the cream coat. The Skylux logo on the fuselage was clear as day. I watched Nathan's face. For a split second, his eyes went wide. His jaw tightened. The color drained from his cheeks. It was the look of a man who had walked into a glass door. But then, just as quickly, the panic vanished. He blinked, and the mask of indignation slammed back into place. "What is this?" he asked, his voice flat. "It is you, Nathan," I said. "Boarding a flight to Dubai. When you said you were in Houston eating steak." He laughed. It was a cold, dismissive sound. "You cannot be serious. This is what you have been doing while I was working. Looking at grainy videos Ava sent you. That woman is a disaster. Lauren. She has always been jealous of us. That is you." I repeated. "It looks like me from a distance," Nathan countered, waving a hand at the phone. "But honestly, Lauren, in this day and age, it could be anyone. It could be a deep fake. Are you taking your meds properly? I know the IVF hormones have been making you unstable lately." The air left my lungs. He was doing it. He was twisting reality until I was the one who was broken. "Unstable?" I asked, my voice trembling with rage. "You have been paranoid for weeks," he said, stepping closer, looming over me. "Just last week you forgot where you put the car keys and had a meltdown. Now you are inventing conspiracies because you are stressed about the baby. You need to calm down." I jabbed a finger at the frozen image on the screen. That is the Patek Philippe watch I bought you for your 30th birthday. That is the geometric tattoo on your neck. And that is your wedding ring on the hand holding her waist. Nathan stared at the image. He realized he could not deny the physical details. He shifted his weight, his eyes narrowing into slits. Okay, he said, his tone shifting from defensive to condescending. So I had a female investor on the plane. She is a whale. Lauren, we are talking $50 million in capital. You have to schmooze people like that. You have to make them feel special to close the deal. So you admit you were not in Houston. I said, why lie if it was just business? Why did you tell me you were in Texas? His face went cold. The charm evaporated, leaving something cruel underneath. Because I knew you would react exactly like this. You are hysterical. You are suffocating me. I am out there busting my ass to build an empire for us, for our future family, and you are here tracking my flights like a psycho. I am your wife, I shouted. You are looking for reasons to destroy everything I am building, he shouted back, slamming his hand on the counter. The coffee in his mug rippled. Do you have any idea what is at stake here? Do you want to ruin us? He leaned in close, his voice dropping to a venomous whisper. And be careful. Lauren, be very careful. You seem to forget that a lot of things are in your name. If I go down, you go down with me. A chill shot down my spine. It was not just a threat. It was a reminder. I grabbed the coffee mug and hurled it into the sink. It shattered with a deafening crash, shards of ceramic flying across the stainless steel. Get out, I screamed. Nathan looked at the broken pieces, then at me. He sneered, grabbed his bag, and stormed out of the kitchen. The front door slammed so hard the windows rattled in their frames. I stood there in the silence, breathing hard, staring at the mess. He had not just cheated. He had laid a trap. That night, I did not sleep. I sat on the floor of my home office, surrounded by boxes of files I had pulled from the cabinet. I opened every envelope Nathan had ever handed me with a casual babe. Just sign this. I am in a rush. I found promissory notes. I found commercial loan guarantees. I found shell company and corporations. All of them bore my signature. Millions of dollars in liability. I realized with a sickening jolt that Nathan was right. If he decided to disappear tomorrow, the banks would not chase him to Dubai. They would come for me. The next morning, I called Ava from my car, parked 3 blocks away from my office. The heater was blasting, but my hands were still cold. I need everything. Ava, I said, my voice steady. The manifest. The payment details. Everything you can get without triggering an alert. There was a pause on the line. I could hear the background noise of an airport terminal. Lauren, I could lose my license for this, she whispered. But, okay. The passenger manifest lists N, Pierce, and Sophie Lane. The flight was paid for by a wire transfer from a corporate account. Eastbound Holdings, LLC. The address is a registered agent in Wilmington, Delaware. Eastbound Holdings, I repeated, writing it down on the back of a dry cleaning receipt. Has he flown with you before? Yes, Ava admitted, her voice thick with guilt. 3 months ago. A trip to the Bahamas. There were 4 passengers, but Sophie Lane was one of them. I didn't want to say anything because I wasn't sure. I thought maybe I was seeing things. I am so sorry. Lauren. I hung up and stared at the dashboard. 3 months ago. Nathan had told me he was at a real estate conference in Phoenix. I remembered how he had called me every night at exactly 9 o'clock, complaining about the heat and the boring speakers. It had been a script. He had been rehearsing his lies while lying on a beach with another woman. I drove to a coffee shop with secure Wi-Fi and logged into our joint checking account. I filtered the transactions for the last year. There it was. A recurring monthly transfer of $4,500 labeled consulting fees, E.H. It was small enough to look like a business expense, but consistent enough to be a salary for someone or a way to siphon money into a hidden pot. That afternoon, I walked into the office of Mariah Jensen at Jensen & Cole. Mariah was a woman in her late 40s with sharp eyes and a suit that looked like armor. She did not offer me tea or sympathy. She just took the stack of documents I had brought and started reading. After 10 minutes, she took off her glasses and looked at me. "You are in a very dangerous position. Lauren," she said. Her voice was calm but severe. "These are personal guarantees. If Nathan defaults on these loans, or if Eastbound Holdings turns out to be a fraudulent entity, the creditors will not care about your marital problems. They will come for your house, your savings, and your future wages." "He is setting up an escape route, isn't he?" I asked, feeling sick. "It looks like it," Mariah said. "Flying to Dubai on a shell company's dime. That is classic asset shielding. He is moving money out of the country, and he is leaving the debt here, anchored to your signature." I felt a wave of self-loathing wash over me. I was so stupid. I just signed whatever he put in front of me. Mariah leaned forward. "Stop that. He manipulated you. That is what predators do. But if he thinks you are just a background character in his life, a wallflower he can bankrupt and discard, then this is the moment you prove him wrong." She handed me a secure flash drive. "Go home. Act normal. Do not let him know you have seen me. Back up every email, every financial record, every text message. Use a cloud account he doesn't know about. And your cousin. She is your ace in the hole. We need that flight data." That night, I sat in the guest bedroom, pretending to read a book while Nathan watched TV downstairs. I created a new, encrypted email account. I named the folder the Nathan file. I was not just a wife anymore. I was an investigator building a case against a hostile target. My phone pinged. It was a secure message from Ava. She had sent a photo of the flight manifest, names blurred except for the relevant ones. She also added a note. "Lauren, there is something else. Every time he flies international with Sophie, there is a special request code on the booking crew discretion, and he tips the cabin crew in cash. Large amounts. It's the kind of thing people do when they are moving things they don't want customs to look at too closely." I stared at the screen. This wasn't just adultery. This wasn't just financial abuse. Nathan was washing money, and he was using my name as the detergent. Mariah wasted no time. We filed an emergency motion for a temporary restraining order on our assets, citing flight risk and dissipation of marital funds. It was a desperate move designed to freeze Nathan's accounts before he could move any more capital to Delaware or Dubai. The hearing took place at the Denver County Family Court in a room that smelled of floor wax and stale coffee. The presiding judge was Richard Lowell. He was a man in his late 50s with silver hair and a face that seemed bored by the very concept of justice. He looked at me not as a person, but as a file number that was keeping him from his lunch. Then the doors opened and Nathan walked in. He was flanked by 3 suits from Lawford and Ray. Leading the pack was Ethan Cole, a litigator known for being as expensive as he was ruthless. I watched closely as they approached the bench. Ethan smiled, a tight, practiced expression, and extended his hand. "Good to see you again." "Your Honor," Ethan said. Judge Lowell took the hand. "Good to see you too." "Ethan, how is the golf swing improving?" "Your Honor, improving." My stomach turned. It was a small exchange, lasting less than 5 seconds, but it told me everything I needed to know. I was not in a court of law. I was in a private club, and I was the uninvited guest. Mariah stood up and began to lay out the evidence. She spoke clearly about the Eastbound Holdings transfers, the flight to Dubai, and the shell companies. She was brilliant. Ethan Cole did not even look at the documents. He stood up slowly and adjusted his cufflinks. "Your Honor," he said, his voice dripping with false concern. "We understand that Mrs. Pierce is upset. However, framing legitimate business transactions as some sort of conspiracy is exactly why we are concerned about her mental state." I stiffened in my chair. "Mrs. Pierce has a documented history of anxiety," Ethan continued. pulling a medical file from his briefcase. She was prescribed alprazolam 2 years ago following a panic attack. Her inability to conceive has, unfortunately, led to a pattern of paranoia and jealousy. She sees monsters where there are only market fluctuations. Objection, Mariah shot back. This is character assassination and irrelevant to the financial facts. Judge Lowell waved his hand dismissively. I will allow it. It speaks to the credibility of the petitioner's claims. The flight to Dubai involved a shell company, Mariah argued, her voice rising. There is a woman named Sophie Lane, a business associate. Ethan cut in smoothly. As my client explained, Your Honor, Mr. Pierce manages a portfolio worth millions. Freezing his assets based on the hysteria of his wife would cause irreparable harm to his investors. Lowell nodded. He did not even look at me. I agree. I see no concrete evidence of dissipation. Just business as usual. The gavel banged. It sounded like a gunshot. Motion to freeze assets is denied. Lowell droned. Mr. Pierce will retain control of the primary accounts to maintain business operations. Mrs. Pierce will be granted a temporary monthly allowance of $2,000 from the joint savings. $2,000. It was an insult. It was an allowance for a child, not a partner who had built that life with him. I walked out of the courtroom feeling hollow. Nathan walked past me, surrounded by his legal team. He did not say a word. He just smirked and tapped his phone. A moment later, my phone vibrated. I looked down at the screen. A text from Nathan. I told you. The system stands on the side of people who know how to play the law. Do not try to hit me with the law again. I showed the screen to Mariah. Her jaw tightened. We were standing in the cold hallway, the marble echoing with the footsteps of lawyers and clerks. There is something wrong here. Lauren, Mariah said, her voice low and dangerous. The way Cole talked to Lowell, that was too cozy. But knowing it and proving it are two different things. Right now, on paper. You look like the crazy wife and he looks like the victim. I felt the heavy weight of the building pressing down on me. I had come here expecting fairness. Instead, I had been stripped of my credibility and handed an allowance like a charity case. I thought about Hannah, my old college roommate who lost everything in a divorce because no one believed her. I was walking down the exact same path. I turned to leave, pulling my coat tight against the chill. As I passed the security checkpoint, a young man in a blue button-down shirt bumped into me. Excuse me, he muttered. He was a court clerk. I had seen him organizing files near the judge's bench. He looked nervous. His eyes darted around the lobby before he pressed a folded piece of yellow legal paper into my palm. If you want to understand why people like you always lose in that room, call me, he whispered. Then he turned and disappeared into the crowd. I looked down at the paper. It had a phone number and a name scrawled in hasty ink. Diego. I met Diego at a dive bar on Colfax Avenue, the kind of place where the floor stuck to your shoes and the lighting was dim enough to hide 1,000 secrets. He was sitting in a booth at the very back, nursing a lukewarm soda. He wore a hoodie over his court uniform, hood up, his eyes darting toward the door every time it opened. I slid into the seat opposite him. Diego. He jumped slightly. Keep your voice down, he murmured, leaning in close. If anyone sees me talking to a litigant from an active case, I lose my job before morning. Why did you give me that note? I asked. Diego looked at his hands. They were trembling. Because I watched what happened in there today. And I have seen it happen 20 times in the last 2 years. He took a breath, checking the room again. Judge Lowell, he said, his voice barely audible. Whenever Lawford and Ray are the opposing counsel. Whenever there are shell companies or complicated assets involved. The ruling is always the same. The wife gets painted as unstable. The husband keeps control of the money. It is a pattern. Are you saying he is taking bribes? I asked, feeling a cold knot tighten in my stomach. I cannot prove it, Diego whispered, But I have seen things. Envelopes passed to his clerk, thick ones. Dinners at steakhouses that do not appear on the official calendar. I tried to report it once. I sent a memo to the Oversight Committee. The next week, I was transferred to the basement archives for 6 months. The message was clear. Stop digging. Or else. I stared at him. Why tell me? Why risk it now? Diego looked up, and for the first time, I saw the anger burning behind his fear. Because of my sister. 3 years ago, she stood in front of Lowell. Her husband had beaten her. He had hidden millions. Lowell gave him everything. He said she was emotionally compromised. She lost her house. She lost custody. I swore if I ever saw that setup again, I would not just stand there. The pieces slammed together in my mind. It was terrifyingly perfect. Nathan's arrogance, the way Ethan Cole shook hands with the judge, the seamless coordination. Nathan wasn't just a cheating husband hiding assets in Dubai. He was part of a pay-to-play ecosystem. He was paying for protection. I cannot fight a judge, I said, feeling the hopelessness rising again. I am just one person. Diego slid a folded napkin across the table. On it was an email address. You cannot fight him in his own court, Diego said. Like you have to go over his head. That is the email for Special Agent Lena Hart. She is with the Treasury Department's Financial Crimes Enforcement Network. She was sniffing around a similar case in Arizona last year before it got shut down. If anyone can touch Lowell, it is her. He stood up to leave, pulling his hood lower. But listen to me. If you reach out to her, there is no going back. If they find out you turned on them, God help you. He slipped out the back exit, leaving me alone with the smell of stale beer and a napkin that felt like a grenade. I drove home in a daze. My house looked different now. It was not a sanctuary. It was a crime scene. I locked the doors and checked the windows. Every shadow felt like it was watching me. I sat at the kitchen table until 3 a.m. I thought about the safety of silence. I could take the allowance. I could let Nathan win. I could survive. But then I looked at the bruise on my soul where his betrayal had hit me, and I knew I could not live like that. I opened my secret laptop. I typed in the address for Agent Hart. Subject Eastbound Holdings, Judicial Misconduct, Denver. My fingers hovered over the keyboard. I was about to blow up my life. If I sent this, I was declaring war not just on Nathan, but on a federal judge and a powerful law firm. I could go to prison if I was wrong. I could be destroyed if I was right. I typed out the summary, the flight logs, the Delaware address, the unexplained cash, the connection to Ethan Cole. The ruling today. My name is Lauren Pierce. I am the wife of Nathan Pierce. I believe my husband is laundering money, and I believe the court system is being paid to look the other way. I am ready to talk. I hit send. The screen blinked, confirming the message was gone. I closed the laptop and sat in the crushing darkness. The refrigerator hummed. The house settled. I felt a strange, cold calm wash over me. I had just lit a match in a room full of gasoline, and for the first time in weeks, I was not afraid of the fire. I was the one holding it. The reply from Agent Lena Hart arrived less than an hour after I hit send. It contained no subject line, just a time and an address for a nondescript office park in Lakewood, 10 miles outside of downtown Denver. I arrived with my hands sweating against the steering wheel. The building had no federal signage, just a generic plaque for a logistics firm. I felt like I was walking into a trap, but the alternative was waiting for Nathan to spring his own. Lena Hart was waiting for me in a small, soundproofed conference room. She was a black woman in her early 40s with eyes that seemed to photograph everything they looked at. She did not shake my hand. She just pointed to the chair. You took a big risk emailing me, Mrs. Pierce, Lena said, her voice a low, steady thrum. But you were right. Eastbound Holdings has been on our radar for 18 months. We know money goes in. and we know it vanishes into the Gulf states, but we have never been able to see who is pushing the buttons. Until now. I opened my bag and slid the hard drive across the table. I have bank statements. I have the incorporation papers for the shell companies. And I have the emails where he told me to sign them. Lena plugged the drive into her laptop. She scrolled through the files in silence for 5 minutes. The only sound was the hum of the server rack in the corner. When she finally looked up, her expression was grim. "He is not just using you as a shield, Lauren," she said. "He is planting landmines under your name. If this structure collapses, the audit trail ends at your signature, not his. He has set you up to take the fall for federal wire fraud." My blood ran cold. "Can you stop him?" "Not yet," Lena said. "We need the full circle. We need to see the money come back." 2 nights later, we brought Ava into the fold. We met in the back row of a grocery store parking lot under the cover of a snowstorm. Ava looked terrified. She handed Lena a manila envelope containing the unredacted flight manifests and the cash payment logs for the Dubai runs. "If Skylux finds out I printed these, I will never fly again," Ava whispered, pulling her coat tighter. "If we miss this, your cousin goes to prison," Lena replied flatly. "You are doing the right thing." Lena laid out the strategy. It was brutal in its simplicity. They could not touch Judge Lowell yet because he had survived investigations before. Someone high up was protecting him. The weak link was Nathan. He was greedy, and arrogance made him sloppy. "I need you to go back inside," Lena told me. "Play the role. Be the wife who is trying to save her marriage. Make him feel safe. Make him brag. And record everything." Returning to the house felt like walking into a cage, but this time, I had the key. I started small. I cooked his favorite dinner. I asked about his day. I let him touch me, suppressing the urge to vomit every time his hand grazed my shoulder. One evening, over a bottle of expensive red wine, I turned on the voice recorder app on my phone and placed it face down on the coffee table. "I was worried about the new SEC regulations," I said, trying to sound naive. "Do they affect the new deal you are working on?" Nathan laughed, swirling his wine. "Babe, those rules are for the little people, the guys who play small. When you operate at my level, you don't worry about regulations. You worry about leverage, and I have plenty of that." "But isn't it risky moving that much capital overseas?" I asked, keeping my voice steady. "It is only risky if you don't know the right people," he said, winking. "And I always know the right people." Meanwhile, Ava was working her own angle. Skylux management had sent a memo instructing crews to give priority status to Mr. Pierce, a directive that reeked of external pressure. On a domestic flight to Aspen, Ava found a moment to chat with him while the other pilot was running checks. "We haven't seen you on the long-haul schedule lately." "Mr. Pierce," Ava said, forcing a polite smile. "The Dubai route is beautiful this time of year." Nathan stiffened slightly, then relaxed, his ego taking the bait. "Yeah, well, I might have another run coming up. Big things happening over there. Things that make this domestic real estate market look like a lemonade stand." As the weeks passed, the evidence mounted. Lena began to draw a map on the whiteboard in her office. The money left Nathan's legitimate construction projects, went into Eastbound Holdings as consulting fees, flew to Dubai, and then crucially came back to the United States into a different set of LLCs as foreign investment. And there, buried in the ownership structure of those new LLCs, were names of people who sat on charity boards with Judge Richard Lowell. It was a laundering cycle. Nathan was washing bribes for the very judicial system that was protecting him. I sat in Lena's office, looking at the diagram that connected my husband to a federal judge. "He thought I was stupid," I said quietly. "He thought I was just a signature." Lena looked at me. "He chose the wrong person to use as a human shield." I went home that night and let Nathan kiss me on the cheek. I smiled. I told him I was happy we were working things out. Every lie I told him was a shovel of dirt I was scooping out of the ground, preparing the hole he was about to fall into. The house began to feel less like a home and more like a waiting room for a disaster. Nathan had relaxed, lulled into a false sense of security by my sudden compliance. I stopped asking where he was going. I stopped questioning the credit card bills. In his mind, I had returned to my proper place, the supportive, decorative wife, but his comfort manifested as control. "You look tired, babe," Nathan said one evening, cutting into a steak. He poured me a glass of wine, filling it a little too high. I was thinking, maybe it is time you left Northbridge. You do not need the stress. I am making enough for both of us now. Why don't you resign and focus on us? My hand tightened around the stem of the glass. He did not care about my stress. He wanted me out of the financial sector. He wanted to sever my access to databases and market rumors. If I was just a housewife, I would be blind. I think I need the routine. Nathan, I said, forcing a soft smile. It keeps me grounded. If I sat at home all day, I think my anxiety would get worse. He stared at me for a long moment, his eyes searching mine for any sign of rebellion. Finally, he shrugged. Suit yourself. I just want to take care of you. But the air in the house was shifting. A few days later, Nathan received a call during dinner. He did not take it at the table. He walked into his study and locked the door. I crept to the hallway in my socks, pressing my phone against the wood, the recording app running. I don't care who is asking questions. Nathan's voice was muffled but frantic. Shut it down. If the feds are looking at the Arizona properties, you shred everything. Do you hear me? Everything. He was scared. The federal probe Lena had mentioned was starting to ripple outward, and Nathan could feel the water rising. That Tuesday, he told me he had an early flight to Chicago. He kissed me goodbye at 4 a.m. and walked out with his suitcase. But 10 minutes later, I saw headlights reflecting off the living room ceiling. I went to the window and peeked through the blinds. Nathan's car was sitting at the end of the driveway. The engine was running. He was not looking at his phone. He was looking at the front door. He just sat there, staring at the house where his wife slept, his face illuminated by the dashboard lights. It was a look of cold calculation. Was he wondering if I knew? Was he wondering if I was a liability he needed to liquidate? He sat there for 5 full minutes before putting the car in gear and driving away. I sank to the floor, my heart hammering against my ribs. The walls were closing in from the outside, too. Ava called me from a burner phone, her voice shaking. "Lauren, management called me in today," she whispered. "They asked about us. They asked if we talk about work. My supervisor said, he said if I value my career, I should remember that client privacy is more important than family gossip." "They know," I said, feeling the panic rise. "Someone told them to scare you." I reported all of this to Lena. Her response was immediate and frustrating. "Back off," Lena ordered. "Do not download any more files. Do not ask him any questions. If he suspects you are the leak, he will destroy the evidence before we can get the warrant. You have to be invisible." Lauren, I felt trapped. I was standing on a ledge, forced to stand still while the ground crumbled beneath me. Then came the cruelest twist of all. That Friday, Nathan came home with flowers. He seemed manic, vibrating with a strange energy. He sat me down on the sofa and took my hands. "I have been thinking," he said, his eyes wide and intense. "We should try again. The IVF. I called the clinic. Let's book an appointment for next month. Let's have a baby, Lauren. A real family. It will fix everything." I looked at him, fighting the urge to pull my hands away. He was using my deepest desire, my grief, as a shackle. A baby would tie me to him forever. A baby would make me hesitate to send him to prison. A baby would be a prop in his defense strategy. "Look at me, Your Honor. I am a father. I swallowed the bile in my throat. "I don't think I am strong enough yet." "Nathan," The doctor said I need more time to recover hormonally. Can we wait 3 months? Disappointment flashed across his face, followed by suspicion, but he nodded. Okay. 3 months. We went for a walk that evening in the neighborhood. The air was crisp. The suburban silence felt heavy. You know, Nathan said casually, looking up at the stars. The world is getting crazy. Sometimes I think about just cashing out, buying a place in a country where the phones don't ring. He stopped and looked at me. The street lamp cast deep shadows over his eyes. Lauren, if one day I had to go away, very suddenly, and I couldn't tell you where, would you trust me? Would you keep quiet about everything you know until I sent for you? It was a test, a question half joking, half lethal. Of course, I whispered, looking straight into the eyes of the man who had stolen 2 years of my life. I am your wife. I would wait. He squeezed my shoulder. Good girl. As soon as we got inside, I went to the bathroom and turned on the shower to mask the sound. I sent an encrypted message to Lena and Ava. He is running. He is making plans to leave the country permanently. If we do not move now, he is going to disappear, and he is going to leave me with the debt. The game of cat and mouse was over. It was time to spring the trap. Lena Hart called me into the safe house at 6 a.m. The room smelled of stale coffee and ozone. She pointed to a black box on the table connected to a laptop. We got the warrant, Lena said, her eyes dark with lack of sleep. Limited wiretap on his burner phone and the eastbound holdings lines. But we need a trigger. We need him to make a mistake. My phone buzzed. It was Ava. He just booked it, Ava said, her voice breathless. Denver to Teterboro, then connection to Dubai. Flight departs tomorrow night. Payment came directly from eastbound holdings, and he flagged it for crew discretion. Lauren, the date matches the hearing for the motion to dismiss. He is skipping bail before bail is even set, I said. I went home and waited for the performance to begin. Nathan walked in at 7 o'clock, tossing his keys on the counter. He looked wired, his movements jerky and too fast. I have to head to Las Vegas for a few days, he said, avoiding my eyes as he poured a drink. Strategy meeting with the partners. We need to pivot on the commercial portfolio. I put on my best smile. Vegas. That sounds fun. Why don't I come with you? I could use a break, and we could see a show. Nathan stiffened. No. It is going to be boring, babe. Just conference rooms and spreadsheets. You would hate it. Plus, I need to focus. Okay, I said, turning back to the stove to hide the look on my face. By the way, I was organizing the office today. I found those old loan guarantees I signed. I made some copies just for my own records. You know, just to be safe. The glass in his hand stopped halfway to his mouth. You kept copies. Where did you put them? Oh, just in a cloud folder. I lied breezily. I shared it with my personal email. Why no reason, he said, his voice tight. Just be careful with the security. You don't want hackers getting our info. He was rattled. It was time for the kill shot, at Lena's instruction. I sat in the car outside the grocery store an hour later. I opened my laptop and drafted an email. I attached a fake Excel spreadsheet Lena's team had fabricated. It listed eastbound holdings transactions, offshore account numbers, and crucially, the names of 3 judges, including Lowell. I typed a quick subject line, FW Evidence Summary for DOJ. Then, I accidentally sent it to Nathan instead of the fake attorney address I had typed in the body. I waited. 2 minutes later, the wiretap recording started spinning at the safe house. Lena played the audio for me over the secure line. Ethan, we have a problem. Nathan's voice cracked through the static. She knows. I don't know how. But she sent me a file. It has the account numbers. It has Lowell's name. I can't stay here. Calm down. Ethan Cole's voice was smooth but urgent. Do not panic. Is she going to the police? The subject line said, DOJ. Nathan shouted, panic rising in his throat. I am moving the flight up. I am leaving tomorrow morning. Get the assets liquidated and wired to the limitless account in Dubai. Now, the trap was sprung. Ava received her orders from the feds an hour later. Fly the plane. Observe. Do not intervene. I spent that night parked down the street from my own house, watching through binoculars. I saw Nathan moving through the master bedroom. He did not pack clothes. He packed hard drives. He packed a thick envelope that looked like cash. He packed his passport. He was not going on a business trip. He was erasing his existence. I did not cry. I felt a strange, cold sense of closure. The man I loved had died the moment he boarded that first flight with Sophie. This man packing his bag was just a criminal I was helping to catch. The next morning, Nathan boarded a commercial flight to Teterboro to meet the jet. Ava was waiting on the tarmac in New Jersey. She texted me updates. He is here. Sophie is with him. She looks nervous. He keeps checking his phone every 30 seconds. He is sweating. Lauren. He knows the walls are closing in. I visualized the scene. The white Gulf Stream, the roar of the engines, the belief that once the wheels left the ground, he would be untouchable. Lena sat next to me in the surveillance van, listening to the tower frequency. Should we stop him, I asked, my heart pounding against my ribs. If he gets to Dubai. Let him fly, Lena said, watching the tracking dot begin to move down the runway. We have the wiretap proving intent to flee. We have the financial transfers he just triggered this morning. If we arrest him now, he is just a husband running away with a girlfriend. If we let him land in Dubai and try to access those frozen accounts, he leads us to the entire network. On the screen, the little plane icon lifted off the ground. Goodbye, Nathan, I whispered. He was flying first class to his own funeral. The raid happened while Nathan was somewhere over the Atlantic Ocean, 30,000 feet in the air, drinking champagne he thought he had paid for. I sat in an unmarked sedan across the street from the Northbridge advisory offices. It was 9 a.m. 4 black SUVs pulled up to the curb in perfect formation. Agents in windbreakers with yellow FBI lettering on the back swarmed the entrance. They did not knock. They flowed into the lobby like a tide. Because of my cooperation, I was not in handcuffs. I was a witness. I watched them carry out box after box of files. I saw them seizing the servers. They were stripping Nathan's professional life down to the studs. By noon, the story broke on the local news. I watched it on the television in Lena's office. Breaking news. Prominent Denver real estate developer Nathan Pierce is under investigation for alleged international money laundering. Federal agents raided offices connected to Eastbound Holdings this morning. The report was vague enough to avoid libel but specific enough to cause panic. Nathan's investors would be calling. His partners would be shredding documents. The house of cards was shaking. According to Lena, Nathan landed in Dubai 7 hours later. He turned on his phone expecting a welcome message from his bankers. Instead, he got an encrypted email from Ethan Cole. Lena showed it to me. Federal inquiry opened. U.S. assets are frozen. Do not return. Stay in Dubai until we can assess the exposure. Do not contact me on this line again. Nathan had replied immediately, his text frantic. What about Lowell? Can he quash the warrant? Ethan never replied. The moment the heat got too high, the rats began to eat each other. That afternoon, Lena sat me down in an interrogation room. A video camera blinked with a red light. This was the official record. This was the dagger. State your name for the record, Lena said. Lauren Pierce. I said clearly. Did your husband, Nathan Pierce, coerce you into signing financial documents regarding Eastbound Holdings? Yes. He told me they were routine. He told me I didn't need to read them because he was handling our future. I looked straight into the lens. I wanted Nathan to see this one day. He bragged about it. I continued, my voice steady. He told me that regulations were for little people. He told me that as long as Judge Lowell was presiding, he could not lose. He used my name to launder bribes. The dominoes began to fall fast. Diego, the clerk who had risked everything, filed a formal whistleblower complaint against Judge Richard Lowell. He attached the flight logs and the pattern of rulings Lena had helped him compile. At the same time, an independent investigative journalist published a bombshell exposé titled "The Gavel and the Gold Inside Colorado's Divorce Court Ring." The article went viral. Judge Lowell was suspended pending an ethics inquiry. Suddenly, the internet was flooded with stories from women who had stood in his courtroom and lost everything. I was no longer a jealous wife. I was the face of a movement. Then came the news from Dubai. Lena walked into the room with a rare smile on her face. "We triggered the international cooperation treaties," she said. "The UAE Central Bank just froze the accounts connected to Eastbound Holdings." I let out a breath I didn't know I was holding. "So he is stuck. He is sitting in a suite at the Burj Al Arab," Lena said. "And his credit cards are declining. He has no cash. He has no passport access. He is a prisoner in a gilded cage." 2 days later, my phone rang. It was Ethan Cole. His voice was smooth, lacking any of the arrogance he had shown in court. "Lauren," he said, "this has all gotten very messy. Nathan wants to protect you. We are prepared to offer a settlement. If you sign a statement clarifying that you misunderstood Nathan's business dealings, that you do not believe there was any judicial misconduct, we can arrange a transfer. $5 million. Tax-free. It is a divorce settlement. You can walk away. Lauren, you can be safe." I stared at the phone. $5 million. It was enough to disappear. It was enough to never worry again. If I signed, Lowell might keep his pension. Ethan would keep his license. Nathan might even cut a deal. I met Mariah and Lena at a diner that night. I told them about the offer. "It is a lot of money," Mariah said, stirring her coffee. She looked tired. "And trials are ugly, Lauren. They will drag you through the mud. They will talk about your mental health again." I looked at Lena. She said nothing. She just waited. I thought about Diego's sister, who lost her children because of Lowell. I thought about the women posting on the forums, the ones who were living in small apartments, because their husbands had hidden millions with the court's blessing. If I took the money, I was just another person they had bought. I pulled out my phone. I opened the email draft to Ethan Cole. I typed 3 words. "I choose light." I hit send. "I am not settling." I told them. "I am testifying. I want to see him in handcuffs." The revenge was no longer about my marriage. It was about burning down the factory that made men like Nathan. The federal district court in Denver was suffocatingly hot, packed with reporters, victims of financial fraud, and a group of women who had lost everything in Judge Lowell's courtroom. I walked through the double doors wearing a simple gray suit. I did not look at the floor. I did not wring my hands. The trembling woman who had sat in her kitchen at midnight was gone, replaced by the witness who was about to light the match. The prosecutor laid out the map of greed on a large screen. It showed the lines of money flowing from legitimate construction loans in Colorado into Eastbound Holdings, flying across the ocean to Dubai, and washing back into the United States. Then came the audio. The courtroom went silent as Nathan's voice, tinny and arrogant, echoed from the speakers. "When your judge understands the game, everything is smooth. The system stands on the side of people who know how to play the law." Nathan sat at the defense table. He had been extradited back to the United States 3 days ago after his visa expired, and his frozen accounts left him unable to bribe the local officials. He looked small. His suit was wrinkled, hanging loosely on a frame that had lost 20 pounds. He looked at me, and I saw panic in his eyes. He was searching for the wife who used to fix his problems, but she was not there. When I took the stand, I kept my voice steady. I told the jury everything. I described the FaceTime call from Ava. I described the signatures I had blindly trusted. I described the moment I realized I was just a human shield for his crimes. Nathan's defense attorney tried to corner me. He paced in front of the witness box, holding my medical records like a weapon. "Mrs. Pierce," He sneered. Is it not true that you were medicated for severe anxiety? Is it not true that you were jealous and paranoid because of your infertility struggles? Perhaps you imagined these conspiracies. I looked at him, and then I looked at Nathan. I took medication, I said clearly. But that was because I was living with a man who made me doubt my own sanity to cover his tracks. I was living in a distorted reality. Now the reality is perfectly clear. At the same time, across town, the Judicial Ethics Commission was holding a public hearing on Richard Lowell. I had provided video testimony for that as well, but the real turning point happened live. As the evidence of Lowell's bias was read, a woman in the back of the room stood up. She broke the protocol of silence. He gave my husband my house, she shouted, her voice shaking. He knew he beat me, and he gave him the house. Then another woman stood up. And another. It was a cascade of truth that no gavel could silence. The internal investigation turned into a public unmasking. The jury in our case did not take long. When the foreman read the verdict, Nathan closed his eyes. Guilty on all counts. Money laundering, wire fraud, conspiracy to commit bribery. He was facing 15 years in federal prison. Because of my cooperation, the assets tied to my name were severed from the criminal forfeiture. I was walking away with my freedom and my reputation intact. Judge Lowell was stripped of his robes that afternoon. The district attorney announced that criminal charges were pending and that every case Lowell had presided over in the last 5 years would be reviewed. I walked out of the courthouse and onto the wide stone steps. Snow was beginning to fall, dusting the streets of Denver in white. Ava was standing there in her pilot uniform, grinning. Lena and Mariah stood behind her, the architects of this victory. A swarm of reporters surged forward, microphones thrust in my face. They asked how I felt. They asked if I still loved him. They asked if I was afraid. I stopped and looked into the cameras. I am not perfect, I said, my voice carrying over the noise of the city. But I chose not to be silent. I turned my back on the courthouse. I walked down the steps, listening to the click of cameras fading behind me. I did not look at the police car taking Nathan away. I looked at the skyline, at the mountains, and at a future that finally belonged to me. Thank you so much for listening to my story. Please comment below and let me know where you are listening from. I would love to hear your thoughts on Nathan's fate. Don't forget to subscribe to Lily Revenge Stories. Like this video and hit the hype button so more people can hear this story.